Have you ever walked through your neighborhood, scrolled through social media, or sat in a coffee shop and felt that gnawing sensation that everyone around you is doing better financially? That somehow, despite your best efforts, your hard work, and your careful planning, other people seem to have cracked some code you haven't figured out yet. Maybe it's the colleague who just bought a house, the friend who's always traveling, or the acquaintance posting pictures from yet another expensive restaurant. This feeling isn't just uncomfortable. It can be paralyzing, demoralizing, and can lead you to question every financial decision you've ever made. But here's what I want you to understand from the very beginning. This feeling is one of the most common psychological experiences in modern society, and more importantly, it's largely an illusion. After years of studying finance and investment, working with people at every income level, and examining the research on wealth perception and financial psychology, I can tell you with absolute certainty that what you see is rarely what's real. The appearance of wealth and the reality of wealth are two entirely different things, and the gap between them has never been wider than it is today. In this speech, I'm going to walk you through the psychological, social, and economic reasons why everyone seems to have more money than you, and why that perception is fundamentally flawed. We'll explore the hidden mechanisms that create this illusion, the cognitive biases that reinforce it, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. By the end, my goal is not just to make you feel better, but to fundamentally change how you perceive wealth, success, and your own financial journey. Let's start with perhaps the most fundamental reason you feel financially behind. You're comparing your internal reality to everyone else's external facade. This is what psychologists call the visibility bias, and it's wreaking havoc on our collective mental health. Think about your own life for a moment. You know every financial struggle you face. You know when you're overdrafted, when you have to skip going out because money is tight, when you lie awake at night worrying about bills. You experience every moment of financial stress in vivid, uncomfortable detail. But what do other people see? They see you on your good days. They see the new shirt you bought, the dinner you splurged on, the vacation photos you posted. They don't see the credit card statement, the budget spreadsheet, or the anxiety. Now flip this around. What do you see of other people's financial lives? Exactly the same curated highlights. Research in behavioral economics has consistently shown that people selectively display markers of success while hiding markers of struggle. A study from the Journal of Consumer Research found that individuals are 3 times more likely to share positive financial events on social media than negative ones. This creates what researchers call an aspirational gap, the distance between how we perceive others' lives and how they actually are. Consider this example. You see someone driving a luxury SUV and assume they must be wealthy. But you don't see that they stretch their budget to its breaking point for that car payment. You don't see that they're eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week. You don't see the $850 monthly payment, the $300 insurance bill, or the fact that they have virtually nothing in savings. According to Consumer Debt Research, approximately 44% of luxury car buyers finance their vehicles for 6 years or more, and nearly 20% roll negative equity from a previous car loan into their new loan. That gleaming vehicle isn't a sign of wealth. It's often a sign of the exact opposite. The same principle applies to housing. You see someone living in a beautiful apartment or house and assume financial success, but you don't see that they're house poor, spending 50% or more of their income on housing when financial advisors recommend no more than 30%. You don't see that they have no emergency fund, no retirement savings, and are one unexpected expense away from financial catastrophe. The visibility bias extends beyond material possessions. It affects how we perceive careers, relationships, and life satisfaction. We see carefully edited highlight reels and compare them to our unedited behind-the-scenes footage. This is not a fair comparison, and it's certainly not an accurate one. If the visibility bias was a problem before social media, it's now a full-blown crisis. Social media has fundamentally altered how we perceive wealth and success, creating distortions that would have been impossible just 20 years ago. The economics of social media platforms are built on engagement, and nothing drives engagement quite like envy and aspiration. Research from the American Psychological Association has found that passive social media use, scrolling through feeds without actively engaging, is directly correlated with increased feelings of financial inadequacy and lower life satisfaction. The more you consume other people's curated lives, the worse you feel about your own. But here's what you need to understand. Much of what you see on social media isn't just curated, it's manufactured. The rise of influencer culture has created an entire economy based on the appearance of wealth. Studies have shown that a significant percentage of influencer content is either sponsored, paid for by companies, or created specifically to generate income through engagement. That person posting from a luxury resort might be there on a press trip, paying nothing. That designer handbag might be rented from one of the growing number of luxury rental services. Those perfect meals might be comped in exchange for promotion. According to market research, the luxury rental market has grown by over 25% annually for the past 5 years. People are increasingly renting experiences, items, and lifestyles for the purpose of social media content. The result is that you're comparing your real life to someone else's temporary performance and feeling inadequate because your everyday reality doesn't match their staged highlight. Even beyond influencers, average people are engaging in what researchers call financial fakery, presenting a lifestyle on social media that doesn't match their actual financial situation. A survey found that nearly 40% of millennials admitted to spending money they didn't have to keep up with their peers on social media. The very people whose lives make you feel inadequate are often drowning in debt to maintain an image. The psychological impact of this is profound. When you constantly see others appearing to have more, do more, and be more, your brain interprets this as evidence that you're falling behind. But you're not falling behind reality. You're falling behind a carefully constructed fiction. Even when people do have money, there's a fascinating psychological phenomenon that explains why it never seems like enough. It's called the hedonic treadmill, and understanding it is crucial to breaking free from the comparison trap. The hedonic treadmill, also known as hedonic adaptation, describes our tendency to return to a relatively stable level of happiness, despite positive or negative life changes. In terms of wealth, this means that as we earn more money, our expectations and desires rise in tandem, leading to no permanent gain in satisfaction. Research in behavioral economics has repeatedly demonstrated this effect. One landmark study found that lottery winners, after an initial spike in happiness, return to their baseline levels of life satisfaction within a year. Similarly, people who receive significant salary increases report only temporary improvements in happiness before adapting to their new income level and desiring more. This has profound implications for how we perceive others' wealth. That person who seems to have everything might genuinely have a high income and significant assets, but they're on the same hedonic treadmill as everyone else. They've adapted to their lifestyle, and it now feels normal rather than luxurious. Their baseline for enough has simply shifted upward. Meanwhile, you're looking at their lifestyle from your current baseline and thinking, if I just had what they have, I'd be satisfied. But the research tells us that's not how it works. If you achieved their level of wealth, within months you'd adapt, and you'd be looking at the next level up, feeling the exact same sense of lack. This is not a defect in human psychology. It's actually an evolutionary feature that drove us to keep striving and improving. But in the modern context of seemingly infinite wealth on display, it becomes a source of perpetual dissatisfaction. The key insight here is that the feeling of not having enough is not primarily about objective financial circumstances. It's about the gap between expectations and reality, and that gap exists at every income level. Beyond the psychological factors, there are structural realities about wealth that remain invisible in day-to-day observation. These hidden advantages create the appearance that some people are succeeding where you're struggling, when in reality, they're playing an entirely different game. Generational wealth is perhaps the most significant invisible advantage. When someone receives financial support from family, whether it's help with a down payment, inheritance, or even just the ability to live at home rent-free while saving it, fundamentally changes their financial trajectory. Research in social psychology has demonstrated that upward comparison is our default mode. We use people who are slightly ahead of us as reference points for what's possible and what we should achieve. This served an evolutionary purpose. It motivated improvement and progress. But in the modern context, where we're exposed to the absolute wealthiest people on the planet through media and social platforms, this tendency becomes destructive. Consider your comparison set. When you think about everyone having more money, who specifically are you thinking of? Chances are you're thinking of friends who seem to be doing well, influencers you follow, successful people in your field, or wealthy individuals you see in media. You're probably not thinking about the billions of people globally who have far less than you. You're not thinking about people struggling with homelessness, or working multiple minimum wage jobs, or living in countries where your annual income would represent a lifetime of wealth. This isn't because you're callous, it's because upward comparison is psychologically natural and downward comparison feels inappropriate or uncomfortable. We don't want to find comfort in others' struggles. But the result is that your reference frame is fundamentally skewed upward, creating the constant impression that you're behind. Furthermore, social media algorithms actively reinforce upward comparison by showing you content that's popular and aspirational. The people who appear in your feeds are disproportionately those presenting markers of success. This creates what researchers call a success bias in your information diet. You're consuming a steady stream of others' achievements while your own struggles remain private. Breaking free from this trap doesn't mean engaging in downward comparison to feel better. Instead, it means recognizing that your comparison set is artificially skewed and doesn't represent reality. When you feel like everyone has more, you're actually feeling like everyone in my artificially narrow, upward skewed reference group has more, which is a much less concerning statement. One of the most pernicious aspects of wealth comparison is that we see others' current status without seeing the years of work, sacrifice, or struggle that preceded it. This creates a distorted perception of how quickly wealth should accumulate and what the journey should look like. Think about someone who's financially successful at age 40. What you see is their current state, the nice house, the comfortable lifestyle, the apparent security. What you don't see is the decade they spent in a small apartment, the years of 60-hour work weeks, the failed business ventures, the careful saving and investing, the sacrifices made along the way. You're comparing your current process to their finished product, which is inherently unfair and discouraging. This problem is compounded by survivorship bias. We disproportionately see and hear about people who succeeded, while those who tried similar paths and failed remain invisible. For every successful entrepreneur you see, there are dozens who attempted the same thing and failed. For every person who got wealthy through real estate investment, there are many who lost money. You're comparing yourself to a pre-selected sample of winners without seeing the full distribution of outcomes. Research on wealth accumulation consistently shows that building significant wealth typically takes decades, not years. The average millionaire is in their late 50s or early 60s, and most wealthy individuals describe their wealth accumulation as a slow, steady process rather than a sudden breakthrough. But this patient, long-term perspective is completely absent from social media and popular culture, which celebrates youth, speed, and dramatic transformation. The result is that you might be on a perfectly reasonable wealth-building trajectory, but because it doesn't match the compressed highlight reel version you see online, you feel like you're failing. You're not failing, you're just experiencing the actual timeline of wealth building rather than the fictional one portrayed in media. Another fascinating aspect of why everyone seems to have more money is that people prioritize spending in different categories, creating completely different visible profiles of wealth. This means you are often comparing your entire financial picture to someone else's showcase category while ignoring the trade-offs they're making. Economic research on household spending shows enormous variation in how people allocate resources. Some people spend heavily on housing while driving old cars and rarely eating out. Others live modestly but spend lavishly on travel. Still others invest heavily in appearance clothing, grooming, fitness, while living frugally in other areas. The psychological trick is that you notice what people choose to showcase. If someone prioritizes visible markers of wealth designer clothes, luxury car, expensive restaurants, they'll appear wealthy even if they're drowning in debt and have no savings. Meanwhile, someone building real wealth through aggressive saving and investing might appear completely average because their wealth is invisible. It exists in retirement accounts and investment portfolios, not in material displays. This is supported by research showing that there's often an inverse relationship between apparent wealth and actual wealth. People who project the most visible markers of affluence frequently have negative net worth when debts are accounted for, while many actual millionaires live modestly and would never be identified as wealthy in casual observation. What this means for your perception is that the people who make you feel financially inadequate might be the exact people you shouldn't want to emulate. Their visible consumption might come at the expense of financial security, while your seemingly less impressive lifestyle might reflect much sounder financial decision-making. Understanding why everyone seems to have more money is valuable, but it's not enough. You need practical strategies to break free from the comparison trap and build genuine financial security. First, radically limit your exposure to comparison triggers. Research consistently shows that reducing social media consumption, particularly passive scrolling, significantly improves financial satisfaction and reduces feelings of inadequacy. This doesn't mean disconnecting entirely, but it does mean being intentional about consumption rather than defaulting to endless scrolling. Second, define success on your own terms rather than accepting default cultural definitions. Wealth isn't a universal concept, it's deeply personal. For some people, wealth means having the freedom to work part-time and spend time with family. For others, it means having resources to travel extensively. For still others, it means building a business or accumulating investment assets. None of these definitions is objectively correct, but accepting someone else's definition guaranteed dissatisfaction. Third, Focus on building genuine financial security rather than the appearance of wealth. This means prioritizing emergency funds, retirement savings, and debt reduction over visible consumption. The paradox is that building real wealth almost always requires looking less wealthy in the short term because resources go to invisible assets rather than visible displays. Fourth, practice gratitude without toxic positivity. Research shows that genuine gratitude practices, regularly acknowledging what you do have rather than focusing solely on what you lack, significantly improve financial satisfaction. But this isn't about denying legitimate financial struggles or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about maintaining a balanced perspective that acknowledges both challenges and advantages. Finally, invest in financial education. The more you understand about how wealth actually works, compound interest, tax advantages, investment strategies, debt management, the less mysterious others' success appears and the more confident you feel in your own path. Financial literacy is one of the most powerful tools for combating feelings of inadequacy because it replaces vague anxiety with concrete understanding and actionable plans. As we've explored throughout this speech, the feeling that everyone has more money than you is fundamentally an illusion created by the intersection of human psychology, social media distortion, invisible advantages, skewed comparison sets, and the gap between appearance and reality. The truth is that many of the people who appear to be thriving financially are struggling. Many are in debt. Many are one unexpected expense away from crisis. Many are sacrificing their future financial security for present appearance. The markers of wealth, you see the cars, the clothes, the vacations, the houses, are not reliable indicators of actual financial health. In fact, they're often indicators of the opposite. This doesn't mean that income inequality isn't real. It absolutely is, and it's growing. Some people do have significant advantages, whether through family wealth, timing, geography, or systemic privilege. But the specific feeling that everyone has more than you, that you're uniquely struggling while others sail through effortlessly, is almost certainly false. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel, and that's a game you can never win. The path forward isn't to stop caring about money, or to pretend that financial stress doesn't matter. Money is important. It provides security, opportunity, and freedom. The path forward is to build your financial life based on your actual values and goals rather than on comparison to others' curated appearances. It's to recognize that building genuine wealth is a slow, largely invisible process that doesn't generate social media content, but does generate actual security. Most importantly, it's to understand that financial success isn't about having more than others. It's about having enough for the life you want to build, and that definition is entirely personal. When you stop measuring success by external comparison and start measuring it by your own values and progress, the anxiety of comparison begins to fade. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're on your own journey, and comparing it to others' carefully curated highlights tells you nothing about whether you're on the right path. Focus on building real financial security, making decisions aligned with your values, and measuring progress against your own starting point rather than someone else's middle or end. If this resonated with you, if it changed how you think about wealth and comparison, I want to ask you to do something. Subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. My name is Mike, and I've dedicated my career to cutting through the noise and giving you the real information you need to build genuine financial security. Not the appearance of wealth, but the reality of it. Every week, I share research-based insights on finance, investment, and the psychology of money. I break down complex topics into practical strategies you can actually use. And most importantly, I'm committed to telling you the truth about how wealth really works, not the fairy tales you see everywhere else. By subscribing, you're making a choice to invest in your financial education, to get information that actually helps rather than information designed to make you feel inadequate so you'll buy something. You're choosing reality over illusion, substance over appearance. So subscribe now, and let's build real wealth together, the kind that provides genuine security and freedom, not just the kind that looks good on social media. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.